Alright, so in this video, I'm going to teach you how to knit. I just made this swatch, and basically, these rows here on the sides, like around the border, that's called garter stitch, where all you're doing is making knit stitches flat, and then in the center here is called the stockinette stitch. So one side looks like this, where it's very flat and there's a lot of V's. And then the other side of that, on this side we purled in those sections, and it's very bumpy and has a lot of texture. So first, I'm going to teach you how to make just like a basic knit stitch after we cast on. So I'm going to take one knitting needle. What size is this? This is a US size 8. And then I'm just taking some acrylic yarn that I have and take some off. All right. Now to cast on. All right, so to start out for every knitting project, I start by making a little slip knot, and this will be like the first stitch of the project. So I just make that little slip knot, put it on my needle, and just tighten it a little bit. Alright, and then for the rest of the stitches, I'm going to cast on by rolling it over my thumb, inserting the needle in, and then repeating that. So I roll it over my thumb, insert the needle, and slide the yarn down. You don't have to like tighten this unless you want your work really tight. Just make sure that the stitches can still move around on the needle. Let's just cast on this many for now. I'm not following like any pattern right now. I'm just kind of making an example. So on the needle we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stitches. And right now we're just going to do the garter stitch. So, well, the knit stitch, which if you knit the whole project, both sides, it'll end up as garter stitch, which is what this border looks like here. That's all just garter stitch, just knit stitches on both sides of the work. So to start out, make sure your yarn is on the side that you're working. So you insert from front to back behind the needle. Bring the yarn over, pull the yarn through, off of that needle and onto your working needle. And you just repeat this. So front to back, yarn over, pull that through, and off the needle. Front to back, yarn over. And it's also good to note that I am a Continental style knitter, which means I hold the working yarn in my left hand. I am left-handed. When you knit English style, I've never done it before actually, you hold the yarn in this hand, and I feel like it's more confusing that way, but maybe that's just me. I feel like for me, it's easiest just to hold the working yarn in this hand. So front to back, yarn over, pull it through, and it goes on this needle. Alright, and I feel like the first row is usually the most difficult, and it gets easier after that. It kind of moves on the needle smoother. So we're just going to repeat that again. Front to back, yarn over, pull it through. I feel like this is a good project for a beginner, just to knit like a scarf or something, just in garter stitch, which is just using knit stitches. Just over and over, getting used to the feel of it. And it gets pretty mindless, so you can do it while you're watching a TV show or like a movie. It doesn't take too much concentration, because you're not thinking about any kind of pattern where you have to change it up. This is what the first 2 rows look like. And you're literally just going to continue this over and over, just to practice. I think it's a good idea just to practice this for a while before moving on to purl stitches. Honestly, when I first learned to knit, I learned from YouTube videos, like when I was in high school, which is like over 10 years ago. I am 32 right now. I think I'm 32, right? I think so. But basically I'm just repeating this, and for the first good long while, all I did was knit scarves in the garter stitch, like just repetitively, until I was comfortable enough, and I was like, you know what, I think I can move on to the purl stitch now. And honestly, it probably took me way longer than necessary before I learned how to purl, because like it's not that difficult. But as a beginner, I was intimidated on learning things too quickly, and so for a while I just made like a bunch of plain garter stitch scarves. But some people might get bored of doing that. But I think it's good to just like practice at least one project like that. Okay, so I'm going to keep continuing this, moving back and forth, just knitting away, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to cast off. If you hear kittens meowing and rustling, that might happen because they are being obnoxious right now. But I'm going to show you, let's say you knit a whole garter stitch scarf and you're ready to cast off. We're going to pretend like I have made a whole scarf and not just a little sample, and I'm done with this scarf. So now let's get our yarn. So now I'm going to knit the first stitch. And then I'm going to knit the second stitch. Now I'm going to cast off the first stitch, which is that very first stitch we did, and pull it over and off the needle. Next we knit the next stitch, so we're going to knit this one. We'll knit this one, and then this stitch we're going to pick up, pull it over the needle and off. And we're just going to do that all along, repeating that. So knit the next one, and then pick up the previous one and roll it over and off the needle. Alright, so we're going to knit that last stitch, and then we're going to lift up that stitch before, lift it off the needle, and then I'm going to end up cutting the yarn here. So I pick up my scissors, I snip it however long I think I need it to be, and then I'm going to pull that tail through that last stitch that's there. There we go. And I just pull it through all the way, and then I tighten that up. And that's the end of finishing it until we weave in the ends. Alright, now that I've cast off my last stitch, I'm going to weave in the ends. I'm just going to kind of weave it back and forth in here, pull it through, and now that that end is pulled through, I'm going to snip it, and now I'm going to do that to the other end. And then this is what the fabric of a garter stitch fabric ends up looking like. If you pull it apart, it looks like this. If you pull it this way, it looks like this. This is both sides of the fabric. Both sides of fabric should be identical. Alright, so I just started knitting up another swatch, and now we're going to add purls into our knowledge base. So if you want to learn how to purl, it's not difficult. So I'm going to knit this like this swatch, and the first and last 3 stitches will be knitted, and the stitches in between that will be purled on one side of the work. So knit knit, knit, and now we're going to purl until the last 3 stitches. So to purl, you bring your yarn forward, so towards you. Then instead of the knit stitch where you go from front to back, this time we're actually going to go to back to front. Then we yarn over and pull it through, and that's purling. We'll do that again from back to front, yarn over, pull it through and off the needle, back to front, yarn over, pull it through, off the needle, until there are 3 stitches left. And usually when you're knitting, the purl side of the stockinette stitch is usually the wrong side, and they usually use the knitted side as the actual outer part of the project. But sometimes there are patterns where the purled side is what you want, but it just kind of depends on what you're making. And then the last 3 I'm just going to knit. I'm doing this garter stitch on the edges and the border. Basically it'll make the work flat. If you were just to knit this swatch in stockinette where you knit one side and purl the other, it's going to curl on the edges. That's just how the fabric ends up coming out when knitting that way. So if you want the piece to be flat, you might have to add some type of border to keep it that way. Because this, when you knit with the garter stitch, the work is very flat and even. I mean, even though it's a bumpy textured fabric with ridges, it'll kind of stay flat. Maybe I should have made a swatch of just stockinette so you could see how it curls up and it doesn't lie flat very well. But basically we knit the wrong side of the fabric by doing those purls in between the 3 edge stitches on either side. And now if you see there, it's looking really flat right here. So on the right side of the project we're just going to do the knit stitches. It's only the wrong side of the fabric where we are doing anything different from before. So on this side we're just knitting all of the stitches. And then when we get to the wrong side, I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches again, and then we can purl. Alright, so on this side of the work, this will be the wrong side, just for our example of showing what the fabric ends up looking like. So I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches again, and this is the wrong side of the project. I am knitting this the same way that I knit this swatch. So it'll end up having this stockinette pattern in the middle, which is very flat looking. So this is the right side of the work, and this is the wrong side. In this section we did purl all of the stitches in that square on the back side, but on the front side it ends up looking like this. Alright, so one more time. Okay, I'm knitting the first 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to purl. So when we knit, the yarn is in the back of the work, and we're going from front to back. When we're purling, we're bringing our working yarn to the front, and then we're working back to front. And then we just yarn over and pull that through. All of these will be purled until those last 3 stitches. Alright, we have those 3 stitches left. Now we're bringing the yarn to the back, and then we're going to knit these last 3 stitches. So the last ones we went from back to front and we worked in the front. Now we're working back in the back, so front to back. Using knit stitches, and then this is what the front is starting to look like. You can see that we're getting that flat V pattern of the stockinette stitch here, and I'm doing exactly the same thing that I did to this one. And then when you're done with like this stockinette section, you can practice your knitting just making swatches if you want to. But when you're done making the little section of stockinette stitches, then you just switch back to knitting both sides of the work, and you'll end up getting the garter stitch border on the other side. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful for teaching you in a beginner way how to knit. So we learned to cast on, we learned to do the knit stitch, and in a work where everything has been knitted in the knit stitch flat, it ends up looking like this. Now, things go a little different when you're working in the round. We're not talking about that yet. I might make another video of knitting in the round and how things change when you do it that way. But knitting flat, this is what doing nothing but the knit stitch looks like. And then knitting flat, when you do the garter stitch there, and then on one side you end up knitting, and then on the back side of that stitch when you're purling, it makes the stockinette stitch, which looks like this. And on most knitted garments, like the majority of the project, will end up looking like this on the outside because it looks nice and flat and well finished. But anyways, I think that'll be it for this video. I'm sure it's long enough. Hopefully this was helpful, and thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day. Okay, bye.